Well, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Here we are late in the semester and late into the first LEGO League season. Hope you and your team are doing well as we get closer and closer to those qualifiers. Excited to see the teams in a few short weeks. Wow, less than 2 weeks for some of you. It's gonna be great to get the teams together, see all the great innovation projects as well as the robots running, and just to catch up with everybody. So with that in mind, this Coaches Corner this evening is going to be all about preparation for that upcoming qualifier. So a couple of just housekeeping things to start us off. As always, just a reminder that we do keep a public folder of all of our documentation for you. So in that folder, you will find tonight's presentation slides, as well as our past Coaches Corners, as well as all of our workshops. And as I'm going to talk about here shortly, I'm starting to populate it with a couple of tournament information documents as well. And as we get closer and closer to your event, you'll see more and more populating in there with information about your particular qualifier. So tonight's agenda is I want to talk about 3 parts: the tournament preparation. So what should you be doing right now with your teams? Want to kind of go over what the tournament day is like, what to expect when you actually arrive at our venue for the big day. And then the last bit, I just want to go through a checklist of things you should be getting ready to take with you as you come out to our event. As always, I'll have time for you to stop and ask questions. Also, please feel free to throw them in the chat. We have some First Nevada peeps helping monitor the chat for me as well. So I want to make sure to get all your questions answered as we get everyone ready for the qualifiers. So the first thing I do want to touch on is, like, right now, literally like this week-ish, what should you be doing with your team as you get ready for the big day? Well, I can't stand on my soapbox enough just to remind everyone, please read the robot game rulebook. It's very important that you do that, and especially the kids as well. It's tough and difficult when we have students come up to us and ask questions about why they didn't receive a score, and we can point to the rule book and say, it clearly says here that that's not allowable, or that is a violation of a particular rule. So we want to kind of cut that a little bit. So just a reminder, please read through the robot game rulebook. Make sure you understand all the rules for the missions you're trying to solve. The other thing that the rulebook has, of course, is what to expect before, during, and after the matches. So you can start finding out, for example, how many technicians can stand at the table at any given time. Are they allowed to hand equipment between each other? How many robots can you bring to the table? Can you bring a laptop to the table? All that kind of sort of information is laid out in here. It's really important that you read through it so that you're going to get the most out of the day. Also, we want to keep the pace of our matches going, and so we want to make sure everyone has an understanding of the rules, so we don't spend a lot of time explaining the rules. But it's okay to ask questions. You definitely should, and hopefully you got a lot out of our recent scrimmages as well, where you had the opportunity to ask many questions to our referees about ideas that you're coming up with. But again, I just want to make sure everyone has going through that robot game rulebook, making sure, especially those later pages here that talk about the generics of what happens during a match, so that everyone has a clear understanding of what the expectation is and what is allowed as your students are running the robot on the table. Also, just a reminder, there are supplemental resources that you should also know about. One of them is, of course, the challenge updates. This is an official scoring document, so things that are covered in this document are what the referees and judges, for that matter, are going to consider when they're evaluating your team. So do make sure to skim through them. Last update was October 1st, so there's not a lot of updates. In fact, I have all of them shown on the screen. It's just too small print to actually read it. But just go through there, make sure that either if it applies to you, that you've adjusted accordingly, or if it doesn't apply to you, that's okay. Just be aware of it in case your students come up with a crazy idea at the last second you want to implement. Other thing is to keep in mind is that not only is the challenge updates and the robot game rulebook official rules, so is the mission video this year, as well as the field setup guide. Those are also considered official documents this year. So if you have any particulars or you're getting to the little nuances of the missions, make sure you're also thinking about what is covered and shown in those videos as well, because all of them are considered official documents / videos, the things the referees are going to consider when they are scoring your team. So just to reiterate something we've touched on in the past, your team should be working on, at this point in the season, really kind of polishing and finalizing their mission model solutions. So the key here, I do definitely want to emphasize this, is you do not have to do all of the missions. You only need to do the missions that your team feels comfortable and interested in doing. So this year we've got 15 missions spread out on the board. You do not have to do all 15 of them. And even though they're numbered, you do not have to do them in any particular order. Part of the fun is the strategy that your team comes up with in trying to figure out which missions it would like to solve and in what order they would like to solve them. Also, it's a good time to start coaching your students about making decisions at the table. Really, it's the kids that are driving the robot. They're the ones that are thinking about, is it worth grabbing the robot and getting a precision token taken away? Or should they let the robot keep running? Or should they retry a mission? Start coaching them up on that decision process. If the robot does this, what should you do? And thinking about all the what ifs on the board. As a target here, if you're a newer team, if you can do 2 or 3 missions reliably, great. You're in a wonderful position. If you want to be highly competitive, you're looking at 7, 8-ish missions you would like to solve, give or take. It changes every year. But do recognize 15 is definitely not something you should be shooting for this early in the season. Solving 15 missions or even close to it is something the world champions will do in April. So don't think that you have to solve the entire board. Just try to get a couple missions down really reliably so your team can score. Other thing you should be working on right now is finalizing your presentations. So one of the key presentations that your team will be doing is giving their 5-minute innovation project presentation. So when a team goes into the judging session, they are going to get 5 uninterrupted minutes with the judges to present their innovation project. As you're thinking about and as you're working with your students to put together that presentation, think of a couple of key ideas in there. Make sure the students are clearly expressing what problem they identified. What was the solution to that? How did they develop their solution? So thinking about the engineering design process. And who did they share it with? And how did they take that information they shared it with? How did they take the information they got from the people they shared with to make improvements on their solution? These are all important aspects of what the judges are going to be looking at. Don't forget that you have access to the rubrics now, so you can see exactly what the judges are going to be thinking about as they're interviewing your team. So as you're working with your team members right now, kind of finishing up that presentation, making make sure it's nice and polished within this 5 minutes, go through the rubric and carefully make sure that all the items in the rubric are touched on in the presentation. Now, don't forget, they will have a 5-minute Q&A with the judges, but it's best not to leave a certain key information into that 5-minute Q&A. You want to make sure your innovation project presentation covers all of that material. In parallel to the innovation project presentation, your team is also going to get 5 minutes to describe their robot design. Now, this is less formal. You don't necessarily have to have a nice, polished presentation for this, but the students should be knowledgeable about their robot and the program behind it, and they should be able to discuss this with the judges. Now, they are awarded 5 minutes of uninterrupted time if they like to share with the judges what is really cool and unique about the robot. Some of the things you might think about as you're working with your team to develop that presentation is, how did the team come up with their design? What is unique about their robot and very innovative? That is something that no other team thought of. What missions can it accomplish, and what kind of success rate? The team should be looking at, can they solve it 4 out of 5 times? If they are only at 30% solution, why are they doing this mission? Maybe it's because it can score a lot of points. They should be able to describe those kind of choices to the judges. They should also be able to explain their code. So how did they learn the code? What were some of the tricks and techniques they used in their code? And you definitely could think about sharing that code with the judges. If you were at the next level programming workshop, one of the things we discussed is putting comments in your codes, showing the judges how there's a nice structure to the code. There's an easy, followable, executable, and followable process to it, are all key things that the judges are going to look for. Again, just like with the innovation project, there is time for the judges to ask questions, so there will be a dialogue process. And it's really important that you work with your team members right now, putting together kind of their thoughts of what exactly did they do with the robot, why did they do it, and what is kind of unique about it. So they're all the key things you should be working on with your team right now. So I'm going to pause here and just ask, of the things I've talked about so far, do you have any questions about things that maybe you should be working on with your team here in these last few weeks? Any questions? Well, you're welcome to ask them in a moment. I'm going to move forward and talk about the actual tournament itself and what to expect out of the big day when you do arrive at the venue. So first off, last week I emailed all of the lead coaches some preliminary information and to also confirm that you are registered for the event. If you did not receive that confirmation email, please let me know. It did only go out to the coach that signed up in the registration form. So do check with your co-coach if you didn't necessarily receive it. Also check your spam box just in case. So one of the things I talked about in that initial email was not only confirming that you are registered for a qualifier, but I also introduced you to one of the two tournament directors. It's either going to be myself if you're in the South or Caroline Hansen if you're going to be in the North. One of the things I also shared in that email is a week or so ahead of your event. Actually, we're going to try to aim for the Friday of the week before your event, so about 8 days ahead of it. We're going to email you a team event guide. And that team event guide is going to include a lot of key information that you might be interested in, things like where exactly to park, what is the general schedule for the event, what is the food options for it. And also it has a number of reminders in there about things like the first core values, as well as what awards are going to be in there and how many teams are going to advance out of that event. So you'll be receiving this team event guide 8 days before your event. It should answer a lot of your questions. So if it doesn't, please let Caroline or I know, and we'd be happy to answer that. The other thing is, about that exact same time, we are going to release the team schedules. The best way to do it, and the way we're kind of thinking about doing this, is we have already put together a folder system, and you can use the QR code there to get to it. In this folders are detailed information about your particular event. So there's a subfolder in there for each of the events. And in there, we will put the schedules for all the teams so that you can go in there about a week ahead of time and actually look at what time your team is competing. A couple of key notes on there is all the teams are expected to be at the event for the entire day. We do have check-in starting at 7:30 in the morning, and our closing ceremonies are going to be somewhere around 4 o'clock, with the entire event wrapping up around 4:30 or so. So the expectation is that you are there the entire day. We do have activities throughout the day. We have practice matches I'll talk about here in a moment, regular matches, and judging. So your team is going to be coming and going throughout the entire day. You also have a lot of opportunities to interact with other teams. So kind of plan ahead right now that you'll be there the entire day, starting at 7:30 all the way through closing ceremonies. All right, so this is what a general schedule looks like. So as I was kind of alluded to a moment ago, everything starts at 7:30 in the morning with team check-in. That's when we'll also open up our pits where your team can go and set up their little station for the day. At 8 o'clock, and very promptly at 8 o'clock, we're going to have a coaches meeting. That's a half an hour long, and during that coaches meeting, we'll give you some last-second logistics related to things like the emergency issues, if we have any during the event, where are the restrooms. We'll go over a few last second notes about the venue. We'll also be there to describe how we're going to have flow in and out of the robot game, as well as in and out of the judging area. We'll also talk about things like where does your team need to queue up? How early should your team queue up? And anything that your questions will be there to answer as well. So that's all going to be contained in that coaches meeting. It's a very rapid fire sort of thing, but a lot of it you already know coming in. So it's just a moment for us to all together ask those last second questions of anything that may be still kind of burning in your mind about how is the day going to go. At 8:30, we start practice matches as well as judging sessions. The exact time that your team needs to be at a practice match or a judging session will be shared again in the schedule that comes out about a week ahead of your event. So you'll know exactly where you need to be, at what time you need to be there based on that scheduling. Your team will be given exact times for all of their practice matches, all of their official matches, and their one judging session. So unlike our scrimmages, which were much more of a free flow, come when you're ready, there's particular times that your team will be assigned to each of their judging and robot game matches. We'll have a tournament-wide break for lunch. That will be all of our teams and our volunteers all at the same time. So we'll have that about noon. I skipped the opening ceremonies. The opening ceremonies will be at 10. At that time, all judging and all robot game matches will be put on pause. We'll all come together in the main gym area, and we will have an opening ceremony together where we recognize our teams, and we'll talk about this year's Submerged theme. So then we'll have some more matches. That'll in fact start late morning. We'll start with our official robot game matches. We'll also continue on our judging. Then we'll get to that lunch break I was already talking about. After lunch, starting at 12:30, we'll have round 2 and 3 of our official robot game matches, as well as any last judging. Late in the afternoon, somewhere around 4, give or take, depending on your exact event, we'll have our closing ceremonies. Do note that there is a gap between the end of the official matches and the closing ceremonies. That gap is there for a couple of reasons. One is it allows your team to clean up their pit area, so you're ready to go at the end of the closing ceremonies. It's also an opportunity for our referees to clean up the robot game area so that we have enough space for our closing ceremonies. It's also an opportunity for our judges to finalize their deliberation and to get the award scripts all finalized. So do be patient with us. Sometimes because our judges may have to take a little longer to deliberate because your teams did such an awesome job. The closing ceremonies, we try to start on time, but sometimes we have to be a little flexible on that time. We'll keep you updated. We fill the time with nice dance parties or some games. Each event's a little bit different, but it's a great time for the kids to just expel any last second energy they have. So let's talk about the robot game. Your team will be given one practice match in the early morning before the opening ceremonies. That practice match we ran as if it was an official match. So you will have a 2.5-minute timer going. The MC will be there. The referees will be there. We're going to simulate it as best we can as a regular match. The only thing is the score that your team gets during that practice round is not going to count towards a ranking at all. Even if it ends up being the best score of the day for them, we still don't count that practice round match. It's an opportunity for our teams to kind of get the jitters out so they can be under the big lights with the music going, to hear the timer going for the match. It's also an opportunity for them to ask any last second questions of our referees. The practice match, again, is just that, is practice. It doesn't count for an official score. Then you'll have round 1 match in the late morning, and then 2 more matches in the afternoon. Those matches do count, and they do follow the rules in the robot game rulebook. So each team will have that 2.5 minutes to score as many points as possible. Teams will be ranked based off their best score out of those 3 matches. So we don't use an average. We don't take one score and remove it like the Olympics. We just look at your 3 scores and we take the best version of it and just use that to rank your team. Some teams that might be the first official match. Some teams it might be the last one. Varies all the time. I'm seeing all kinds of cases happen. So just know it's only the best match that we use to rank your teams. The other two are basically thrown out unless we use them as tiebreakers. So if teams do have a tied top score, we go into their second score and sometimes their third score to see as a tiebreaker. Besides the robot game, of course, your team will have a 30-minute judging session. During this judging session, they will cover all aspects of judging. So there will be the innovation project, there'll be robot design, and new this year is a new approach to the core values. But all of the judging sessions follow the same standard flowchart as I'm showing here on the screen. Teams will enter into the judging room. They'll have about 2 minutes to say hello, and the judges will talk with them a little bit, get them comfortable, and then let them settle in. And then, as I mentioned earlier, teams will be given 5 uninterrupted minutes to present their innovation project. And that could be whatever your team wants to do, a fun skit, it might be a news article, it might be just a play, it might be a little musical. It's really up to you. That 5 minutes, though, is completely for your team to share the information. A couple of important notes about this is the only thing you should assume is going to be in the room available to you is a table to set things on. Do not assume a projector. Do not assume power. All of that, if you want to use it, you need to bring it in. Your presentation should be live. You can use small clips of video, but the vast majority of the presentation does need to be live from the students. Other couple of things on here is that your team should be able to carry in the props with themselves. However, if there's any issues in terms of like safety with the kids, we do allow the coaches to help out, but ideally the students are doing all the work. This is their day to shine. They should be doing all the work. So unless there's something of an issue, coaches, you got to sit back and just watch the team do their thing today. After their 10 minutes working on the innovation project, which does include that 5 minutes of Q&A with the judges, the next part of the judging session is 10 minutes on robot design. Again, your team will be given 5 minutes to present whatever they would like about explaining the robot. It might be about the engineering of the robot. It might be about the programming. It really should be a combination of those two. It should also kind of touch on, as you go through the rubrics, the way you incorporate your core values into the robot design as well. So kind of think about that. When you look through the rubric, make sure you're looking at the things about how your team was inclusive, impactful, how they had teamwork and had fun. That should also come through as part of their presentation. They will then have a 5-minute Q&A where the judges will ask them some more questions and kind of get more information out of the team. The whole session, the judging session, wraps up with 8 minutes of share and feedback. That's a time where the judges will give them some very informal initial feedback. Also a time for the team to continue discussing anything they would like. This is a good time, again, to polish up any questions that are outstanding, and definitely for the judges to make sure they have all the information from your team members. One thing I will say is, coaches, you're invited to join your team in the room, but in the room you have to stay silent and you have to not give your team any cues. One of your coaches is allowed to videotape the session, but that is only for your team's historical reasonings. You cannot use that video to argue for a change in the rubric scores. So again, 2 coaches are allowed to join the team in the room, but the coaches must stay silent. They cannot give any cues to the team, and they cannot do anything to influence the team's presentation. They are just a fly on the wall. One of the coaches is welcome to and encouraged to record the session, but only for the purposes of reviewing it after the tournament is over. We also ask that you do not record our judges in any way, mostly because we don't want to get their notes in the video. The judges are going to be taking private notes, and we want to make sure that those don't show up in your videos. As we've been talking about all season and during our workshops, the rubrics are available to you. So you know exactly what the judges are looking at. Veteran coaches, I do want to point out, of course, there's been a major change this year in that there isn't a standalone core values rubric. Instead, what there is a judging session feedback document, which kind of gathers up all the comments the judges would have for your team. Instead, with the core values, what they're doing this year is they're incorporating them into the innovation project and robot design, as well as we're continuing with that gracious professionalism score at the robot game table. The idea behind this move is the core values are really how we do things, while the innovation project, robot design, as well as the robot performance is really what we do. So the idea is that we should be measuring our core values in the things we do. And so that's what we're doing this year is we're actually going to go into the innovation project and robot design rubrics and identify special criteria and double count them for the core values. So it's really important for you as a coach to sit down and look through these rubrics ahead of time. And again, as you're working on polishing up your team's presentation with them, go through and make sure you're addressing the items on the rubrics. So be sure you're doing things like identifying a problem associated with the innovation project, designing a solution, creating that solution, iterating through it, as well as communicating that solution. In the robot design, you want to make sure you're identifying, again, the problem you're trying to solve, in this case, the missions, designing that robot to solve it, being creative with it. What kind of attachments are you making? How are you improving and iterating your robot through the season? And again, communicating those ideas with people like the judges. You will be able to receive the feedback that the judges provide in the rubrics. However, we're going to do it all digitally. Digitally, that felt weird coming out. Electronically, let's say it that way. You will receive that information electronically. However, the way this works is that all of our scoring behind the scenes is taken care of through a program called the Event Hub. Our judges are going to use the Event Hub to record your team in the rubrics. We're also going to have your robot game scores put in there as well. For you to access the judging feedback, what you will have to do is you will have to accept an invite that I'm going to send you on Thursday evening. You need to accept that invite within 72 hours. That will allow you to view the rubrics afterward. I'm going to include a little reminder in the team check-in packet so you remember to do this. We're purposely setting out the invites on a Thursday evening so that it spans into and over the event itself. So you do have that reminder at the event that, hey, you do need to accept this invite to access the rubrics. So on the Thursday night going into your qualifier, just check your email to make sure you accept that invite. It's a pretty straightforward process. In my notes here, I have also put a link to what is called the Event Hub guide. It was also linked to in our newsletter on Monday. So if you have any questions about it, start there. Otherwise, send me a quick email. Another thing, I've really always talked about the robot game rulebook as one of the most important things for you to do. Coaches, if you really want to become a really good coach and really understand how First LEGO League works, I invite you to volunteer as a judge at an event your team is not competing at. By becoming a volunteer, you get to see not only multiple teams and get creative ideas and watching these teams, you get to see the process behind how judging works and everything that goes into the event itself. I consistently hear from judges who do, from coaches who do judging, how valuable it is as an experience. Not only is first fun, and it's a great way to give back to a wonderful program. As a coach, it really does give you some wonderful insight into everything. And it also gives you some sparks about things you can do in the future as you're watching multiple teams come by. If you're interested in volunteering with us, start by going into your first dashboard. In your first dashboard, there is a volunteer section right there where instead of going under your team area, you can go under event volunteering and sign up to volunteer at an event your team is not competing at. And that's kind of important. We want to make sure you're not at that event. While I'm here, we do have a handful of events that could use some more volunteers. In the South, I know November 16th, we could use some more volunteers. I believe in the North, we could use some more volunteers in both of the Reno Carson City events as well as the Oco event as well. So if you have the availability, we'd love to have you come out, help volunteer, and get a new perspective on how First LEGO League works. So at the end of the event, we do celebrate the achievements of our teams. The whole idea of the event itself, the whole qualifier and tournament structure is such that we are here to celebrate all the accomplishments that teams have achieved throughout the season. Teams are learning engineering through using their building and programming their robot. They're also learning about the engineering design process through the innovation project. They're learning about core values. They're learning about how to be a team. They're learning about having fun. And we want to celebrate all of those achievements during our closing ceremonies. During our closing ceremonies, we will hand out a handful of awards. We will also hand out medals to all of our team members and coaches. We're going to recognize teams for their achievements and everything they've done. Most importantly, if the kids are having fun and they're interested in coming back, then you as a coach have done a great job. And that really should be the measurement of success, is when the students say, hey, I want to do this again next year, then coach, you've done a great job. But just recognize we will be closing out every tournament with a closing ceremony. Do want to make sure you're there for it. Unfortunately, we every year have a case where we call out a team's name so we can give them an award, and they've left early. And so then we're sitting with our award in hand. So do sit and celebrate not only your team's achievements, but also the achievements of the teams around you as well. So I'm going to touch on a topic we've talked about a little bit before. The 4 core areas of what your team is going to be measured on during the day is, of course, there's going to be the robot game itself. As we talked about earlier tonight, the robot game is measured by 3 runs at the table, and only the top score is used to rank the teams. But the robot game itself is only 25% of the overall measurement of our teams. In addition to that, they will, during their judging session, describe the robot design itself. We talked about this already this evening. During the robot design portion of the judging session, they're going to talk about the actual build of the robot, where the design came from. They'll also talk about the programming of the robot. They'll talk about how the team worked together in coming up with these ideas, how they iterated through them and made improvements. In a very analogous way, the team is going to, during judging, talk about their innovation project. Again, they're going to come up and talk to the judges about where they came up with their idea, how they worked as a team to formulate an idea for a solution, how they iterated through that solution and communicated at the end. Innovation project, just like robot game and robot design, are all 25% of the overall score the team would receive. These are the 3 major components of First LEGO League on what we do in the program. As I talked about a little bit earlier, the core values are how we do it, and they represent that last 25% of how our teams are measured. Core values are being measured a little differently this year, in that they are measured inside of the robot design innovation project, as well as part of the robot game, where they get their gracious professionalism score at the table. So I have mentioned this core values over and over. They are the foundation, the main ethos, the philosophy behind FIRST. All of our FIRST programs share the same 6 core values. And it's really important that you're sharing these core values with your team, not only at the end of the season, but throughout the season, and encouraging them to use these core values in everything they do. So again, those 6 core values are discovery, innovation, impact, inclusion, teamwork, and fun. These 6 core values should be communicated through the presentation the students do. Think about ways your team can talk about fun, innovation, inclusion during their innovation project, during their robot design. The judges want to know, what were the things that they discovered? How did they work as a team? What kind of impact did they have on their community around them? These all should be baked into those presentations they do, and it should also be exemplified throughout the tournament. Core values are measured not only in the judging room, they're measured at the robot game table. They're also measured in the pit. They're measured in the hallway. They're measured everywhere. And it's not just for the kids. We're also looking at the core values of the coaches and for the parents. We definitely don't want to see arguing in the stands. We want to see our parents also as well exemplifying the core values. Now, at an event, these are the list of awards that our teams are eligible to receive. The Champions Award is a combination of those 4 core areas. So our overall Champions Award winner is going to be a team that is well balanced in all 4 of the core areas. They're going to be good in the robot game. They're going to be good in robot design. They're going to be good in the innovation project, and they're going to exemplify the core values. They don't have to be the best in all the areas. They don't have to be the best in one area, but they need to be strong in all 4 areas in such a way that they're balanced. So the Champions Award is going to recognize a team that is really well-rounded and can do a little bit of everything very well. That's what we're looking for in our Champions Award. The Core Values Innovation Project and Robot Design Awards, these are based on the rubrics and the things we see around the event itself. So we talked about how there's an innovation project and robot design rubric explicitly, how the core values are double dipped in those rubrics, and how they're also at the robot game table. We will assign awards based on how teams are in terms of presenting their innovation project and the solutions they come up with. We'll have an award for our robot design, for a team that exemplifies great engineering design process. And the core values, of course, will recognize a team that exemplifies all the core values of FIRST. We have a handful of what we call Judges Awards. These Judges Awards, there's not explicitly a rubric for it. Instead, what happens is during the interview process with the judges, teams will get internally nominated for these awards. And so it's not something you should be coaching your team toward. Just let the kids be natural, and the judges will self-identify these key features that your team might be nominated for. We will recognize these 4 awards during our closing ceremonies. We've already talked about a couple of times tonight that the robot performance is really based on how the team is able to solve those robot game missions. And we take the best score from each team, use that to rank the teams, and the highest performing teams will be recognized with the Robot Performance Award. At every one of our events, we want to say thank you to all of our coaches and mentors. And we want to recognize one special coach or mentor for the things they do to help inspire their team and include them in moving on and to become a future STEM leader. Coach Mentor Awards are done through a nomination process. We'll include that information in the team event guide. We'll have nomination forms for your team members or parents or co-coaches to fill out to help nominate coaches for this award. We collect those nomination awards at the event, and then our judge advisor reviews them and helps identify one recipient of our Coach Mentor Award at every event we have. New this year is the Peer Award. The Peer Award is also a nomination-based award where teams can nominate other teams for the great things they do during an event. So if a team maybe receives help from another team, maybe they accidentally dropped the robot and another team comes over and helps them rebuild it, maybe helps them with some programming. There's all kinds of ways that teams can help each other out. They can then be thanked for their efforts there and showing those core values by nominating them for a peer award. There are peer award nomination forms that we'll have on site. Teams are welcome to fill those out to nominate their peers, and then we'll recognize that team during the closing ceremonies. So you'll notice here, and a key part of First LEGO League is we aren't just looking for an overall champion. We're looking for teams that exemplify all the different parts of First LEGO League. And teams can receive accolades and recognition for different parts of the program. So a team that maybe is new and is just trying to figure this program out, but they come in with a great enthusiasm and really are putting their best foot forward, that's a great team for the Rising All-Star Award. Or maybe a team figured out something after a lot of trial and tribulation. They had a great breakthrough this year. Or maybe they just, that robot just scored a ton of points. We'll recognize them for that robot performance. Now, after these awards are handed out, the other thing we're going to do is we are going to advance about 30% of our teams from our qualifiers onto a championship tournament. So our qualifiers this year are all in November. We have qualifiers on November 9th, 16th, and 23rd throughout the state. From those qualifiers, we're going to advance a handful of teams onto our championship events. Our championship events are going to occur on December 14th. One's going to be in Reno, and one is going to be in Las Vegas. The advancement numbers right now, and they probably will stay this way unless something dramatic happens. The advancement numbers are 11 teams are going to advance from the Reno and Carson City qualifier, along with 2 teams from Elko. That will put 24 teams into our Northern Championship event. In the South, all 3 of our qualifiers, we're going to advance 10 teams out of it to our December 14th Southern Championship. From our championships, a very small number of teams will then advance on to what we call tertiary events. Those will be a mix of the World Festival, which is a part of the first championship, as well as the Open Invitationals. Now, unfortunately, at the time of this meeting, we don't know how many teams from Nevada will be invited on. I hope to have those numbers by our last Coaches Corner in early December. So stay up to date, read your emails, and check out Slack and Facebook. I will make sure to share that as soon as I have that information. A couple of our teams will advance beyond the Nevada border and represent the team at international competition. That's a lot of talking. Let me pause. See what's going on in the chat. Amanda, send me a quick email if you don't find it.
I found it with the help of others today.
Okay, good.
Thank you for that.
Yep. Farah, it looks like Scott, you answered Farah. Yeah, so I didn't dive too much into the pits. I'm going to talk about the pits here in a moment and how much space you're allocated as a team. And Farah, well, how frequently are the tables cleaned? Yep, and Scott said that we reset them. And Farah, that's an important idea to keep in mind, is that our tables are going to have variations to them. We do use the Andy Mark tables, which for the most part are pretty darn smooth. There are 2 seams on them, but the seams seem to be covered up pretty well by the mat. But there's always going to be small variations. There's also going to be lighting, and there's also going to be the mat itself slipping occasionally. So just kind of engineer around that, understanding how in the real world we have the same situations as well. So there will be small variations, but we do everything we can to try to make things as uniform as possible. Good. Are there any other comments, questions that you'd like to ask, share? All right. Now I want to move into my last section tonight, which is kind of just a tournament checklist of what should the things you be worried about or concerned about or put into your basket to make sure you bring along to the big day. Well, first and foremost, the very first thing you're going to do when you arrive at the event is you're going to check your team in. And as part of that check-in process, we will be collecting an official roster. We don't do these for the workshops or the scrimmages because they're unofficial events. They're first Nevada hosted event. This is now an official tournament, and so we do need to collect your team rosters. I've talked about this in prior coaches corners. It's also been included in the newsletters as well. In short, what you do is you collect the consent and release from each of your the parents of your students on your team, as well as the 2 coaches. They have to complete their YPP screening and have their consent and release on file. You will then go into your first team dashboard and you will print off an official roster. So the document is going to look very similar to the one I show here on the screen. It's not just that you write down in a spreadsheet who's on your team, is that there is an official document you do need a print from your first dashboard. Bring that in the morning of. Now, I will say that we've had a couple situations, especially in First Lego League, The lower age limit is a soft limit, and so some of our students who are in the 3rd grade aren't quite of age yet, but yet we still allow them to participate in our program. Unfortunately, the first system doesn't allow them to be added to the team roster in the normal ways. So for them, they have to do a paper copy, and you can just email me a request for that. I can send that to you. That's the only exception for using a paper copy. All other teams should, and all the members should be using an electronic version, so you're included in on this team roster. Obviously, the big item you should bring is the robot itself. So your robot should be fully built and charged and programmed before you come to the event. However, the day is a long day, so you will want to keep your robot charged throughout the day. So do make sure to bring your power plug. Do also make sure to bring your tablet or your laptop if you want to make any updates to your code. Little best practice advice. When I used to coach First Lego League, I wouldn't let my team change their code on site because there's always going to be tweaks they try to make, and they don't understand why it changed the robot so dramatically. I would really coach your kids to finalize the programs at your school, at your homes, before arriving at the school. You will have access to practice tables. So if there is some very minor tweaks you need to do, you will have that opportunity. But all of your coding should be done before you get to the event. Also, one of the central tenets of First Lego League is this is a program for the kids. So coaches, you should not be the ones handling and programming the robot. This is something that we will keep an eye on when we're at the event. It's written into the robot game rulebook and the team meeting guide. This is really for the kids to do the work. So we do want to make sure that they're the ones doing all the work at the event. Also, do read the robot game rulebook very carefully for what is allowed on your robot. Remember, you're only allowed one controller at the table. What that means essentially is you can have only one robot at the table at any match. So you can't bring multiple robots to the table. Also, you can only have a maximum of 4 motors. Keep that in mind as well. These are some of the common things that we see at our tournaments. So, of course, we are more than robots. So don't forget your judging materials as well. So a lot of our teams put together props as part of their presentation for their innovation project and even their robot design. It's not a requirement, but a lot of teams do that. So do make sure to bring them along. You have space in the pits to set them up and to show others and to share, which is a great part of our day. But don't forget to pack them up. Also, our teams have a great time just interacting with each other. We all are in this together as we progress through the season. We're all working on learning about the oceans and exploration. So share with everyone the things that your team has worked on. So you're welcome to have pit decorations to show other teams. If you want to hand out swag, you're welcome to do that as well. So the pits really are a place for the teams to interact and to network. So have fun with it. Now, unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly the type of tables we'll have at every event. A lot of times, though, our pits are in cafeterias. So a lot of times there are cafeteria tables, but that can mean all kinds of things in the different school districts. Some of them are round, some of them are rectangular with benches. There's all kinds of options out there. So kind of be flexible, knowing that what you're going into for that as well. Important thing is do not bring your challenge mats and mission models to the event. We have practice tables for the teams. You will get 5 minutes at a time at the practice table. So it kind of will be very much like the scrimmage and how your teams can come up and use the practice table for 5 minutes and rotate off. But because our pits tend to get very crowded, please do not bring your practice mat and do not bring your mission models. We will provide all the mission models and challenge sets that you need. So if we see you coming in with them, we will politely ask you to take it back to the car. There's just not enough room, and for safety reasons, we have to kind of leave the aisles open. And so we do ask you just leave those at home. Don't bring in your challenge sets to the event. Also, I really want to encourage this this year. The pits are really designed for our teams. So the pits are a place for them to put their stuff between matches, between judging. The pits are their place to kind of just rest for the moment and hang out. And that's what their coaches. Parents, your place is in the stands as fans.
Can you do me a tea, please? Add the water here, please.
So think of the stands as just like a sporting event. That's where our fans are. That's where we want our parents to be. And I mention this because the last few years we've had overcrowding in the pits. As parents sit in the aisles, they bring in their own stadium chairs. So we're asking that no folding chairs are brought in, no extra chairing. We have room in the stands for our teams and our parents. So the teams really should be hanging out in the pits. The parents can hang out in the stands where they can watch the robot game. And this is something we're going to slowly work on as we try to get more fans in the stands to watch the teams. And the pits, we want to open up the aisles and make sure everyone has accessible access to all of the different parts of the pits. We don't want any tripping hazards. We want to be able to get through the pits as quickly and smoothly and safely as possible. So again, if you work with your family and friends, just point them to the gym, have them go there to watch the robot game, hang out there. They can come by the pits. They can visit their team quickly. They can look around, walk around, see what the other teams have done. We just ask that they don't take out a chair and sit in the pits and take up a lot of the space. Again, for safety reasons, we really kind of want to open up our pits some more to make sure we have enough room to get through them. It is a full day, and as I talked about already, we do ask that our teams stay the entire day. So you will be there first thing in the morning, and you'll be leaving about dinner time. So it is a long day. Just plan accordingly. Now, I can't tell you that every event is going to be the same because we do have variations. Some events are held in high schools. Some of them are held at partner venues. Some of them are convention centers. So depending on which event you're at, the food options are going to vary. But again, that team event guide that you will be receiving will explain the food options for you at your event. Most of our events, though, are open to our teams bringing in food and snacks. Definitely need a plan for that lunch. Some of our events will have food for sale, some snack foods. I'll let you know in the team event guide. Caroline will let you know as well, but plan accordingly. Make sure those hungry little kids have their food, have their drinks. Make sure you take time off during lunch to just take a breath and slow down for a little bit. So just plan accordingly about that, and we will communicate with you what the food options and policies are. And they are going to be, unfortunately, a venue specific, but just read through that team event guide to find out. Lastly, and most importantly, definitely bring your team spirit. We are a sporting event. Even though we're building robots, we are a sport for the mind. So come out with your costumes on. Come out with that team spirit. Come out with those cheers. Let us hear it. Scream loudly. Share it on social media. These kids have been working hard for months, and this is their opportunity to shine. And we want to be supportive of them, as well as you as the coaches who have worked with them for these last few months, getting to prepare for the big day. This is your time to shine and let it out. So bring your team spirit. Cheer on your team. Cheer on other teams. Help other teams out. Wear your fun costumes that identify your team, and just enjoy the day. We really want to make sure you're having fun throughout the day. So with that, I am now done. Please ask your questions in the chat. Unmute yourself. Ask away. Yeah, and that was in Scott's reply there. That's the key is we've been having situations where we'll have 8 or 9 parents just sitting in the pit table, and it is taking up a lot of space, and it has starting to become a little bit of a hazard. So we are trying to free it up. So if one parent wants to designate or a coach wants to stay with the team pit, watch the stuff. We also have volunteers all throughout our event. I did forget to say that the practice tables are usually more often than not in the pit area as well. So you'll have quick access to them in the pit area. Are there any other questions? Are we excited? I am. Working so hard for this. Oh, I can't wait. This is the best part of first, is we get together for these events. I love it. So at this point, the most important thing is make sure to find that confirmation email just to make sure you received it. Keep your eyes peeled for information coming from Caroline and I on the Friday of the week before your event so that you can get that team event guide with more details. And then as well as going into that folder that I've linked to through this QR code, and that is where you can see your schedules as soon as they are available. Yeah, the season did go super fast. Yep, it did. But at the holiday break, everyone's just going to sit back and sigh and relax. Yep. And then you're going to come volunteer at First Tech Challenge and see how awesome the next level is. Well, we are at the end of the night. I'm going to stay on, answer any last questions. Otherwise, I will see teams in just a few short weeks. Thank you, everyone.